can I extend my expertise? How can I extend my empathy for what has happened? And so I went on Facebook and I pressed the go live button. It was my very first time being on a Facebook Live. I wasn't
Tonight
even
we're
sure.
continuing in our relationship series. And this should be a really good conversation. It's February. We celebrate Black History Month. We celebrate Love Month, for those that do, by way of Valentine's Day. And we're going to talk about all those things, relationship in the Black community. And we're going to talk about Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about what this disconnect is. So if you've been following, you've been keeping up with everything, go ahead and share this live. Get your people in this space. And please remember, you can drop your questions in the comment section. We can view your questions and we will answer your questions accordingly. So go ahead and share this live with your family, friends, foes, your lover, your boo. I mean, Valentine's Day is Friday, right? And what better way to let them know what they need to know before time? And I have a sandwich therapist, right? We're going to talk about sandwich therapy. And because we can't say the other word, so if you follow along with me, and in case you got your kids in the room, we're going to use the word sandwich, okay? And we're going to sprinkle a little sandwich therapy in there because it is important. It is important. I'm not going to say I think it is important. I know it is important. Not everybody's single. There are some married people who struggle mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because they're not having sandwich therapy in their relationships. So we're going to talk about all that because, baby, it all affects your mental health. And your mental health can be affected at any age. We know that. We are here to educate, empower, and equip. Don't let Valentine's Day sneak up on you and you don't know what to do. So if you're a man and you know what I'm saying, you got a couple questions, but you haven't known where to ask those questions, slide them in here. You can even put them in my inbox and then I'll post it anonymously. But go ahead, share this live. Get your people in here. We are live. I've already turned it to public, so you should be able to view. The guest is already here. She's in the green room, and we're ready to have this very beautiful conversation. And again, what I was saying earlier was that the reason that this series exists, 22, 23, it started to become this fight, this head bump between men and women, more specifically Black men and women, because that's what's on my news feed. So the clash between men and women, and I'm just like, can we all get along? What's the problem, right? Why the men want to say what women should be doing? We start talking about the table, 50-50, just all these conversations that did not bring good to the community. Actually, it caused a bigger divide. And so now you got women out here living their best lives, solo, single. And listen, girl, I ain't hating on you. I'm with you. And then you have the men out here, whatever y'all out here doing. I'm just saying, I am a person of family. I am a person of community. And I know you cannot have a strong community unless you have strong family first. So that's all the intro. That's all the preliminary. See, I said it right though. That's the preliminary. Go ahead and share this live. Go ahead and get your people in this space. And remember, please post your questions and comments in the comment section. This is an interactive study. So you are welcome to be a part of the conversation. So drop your comments, drop your questions. If she says something, well, when she says something. When she says something that resonates with you, when she says something that gives you the aha, listen, thumbs up, star, love it, retype the comment, and I'll put it up top so everybody can see what resonated with you. But we're going to check into the Lightroom, right? I've already done all the pre-work. We're ready to have this conversation, okay? But share the live, right? Come talk to us. Welcome to the Lightroom. I'm going to go ahead and bring Miss Stephanie up because we want to respect people's time and we want to have a great conversation in as much time as we can. So I am Marquita Dorsey, your mental health advocate and coach. Welcome to the Lightroom. All righty. So she's here. I've already set the stage, right? And so StreamYard makes me feel really fancy, the fact that I have this backstage. And so I call it the green room, considering we're in the light room. And then when I get to bring people to the stage, it's like this big moment. So welcome to the stage here in the light room, Miss Stephanie.
Woo, hello. Woo, woo. Hello.
Yeah, if I had that little podcast thing, I would have had like the hands, the clapping hands and the cheering and all of that. So it's just me. So I got to do my own woo, Woo.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the way it works in here, I introduce the guests the way that I know them and the way that I met them, and then I allow you, in your very own way, to introduce yourself to the people, telling them whatever it is you would like them to know about you, and then we jump into the conversation. All right.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
So a couple of weeks ago, we both were invited to speak on a panel about Black men's mental health. I, for one, was very elated for the opportunity. And then at first I saw men, and then I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a lady, a beautiful Black lady in this conversation. And just the amount, the wealth of knowledge, the energy, the thoroughness of research and history that came forth during this conversation, I was like, oh yeah, we gotta deepen this conversation, and we gotta have more of this conversation. So in that moment, I was like, hey, so I have a podcast. Would you like to be a guest on my podcast? And yeah, that's how it happens. That's where it happened. And here we are today. We had a little background conversation about, who we are, what we do for the work. But that is how we met. That is how I know Miss Stephanie. And now I will allow her to introduce herself.
Hello, and thank you. So I am a licensed professional counselor. I am a licensed mental health professional. I have been in the field of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, probably over 20 years. Currently working on my PhD. I am at the dissertation stage of my PhD in human sexuality. And my focus is on Black men, Black boys, survivors of childhood sexual abuse, sexual trauma. I'm also a relationship expert in that I'm a systems therapist. So I look at relationships and like big picture stuff. I also do individual therapy, but my jam is relationships, families, and couples.
You see what I'm saying? The Lightroom just doesn't miss, y'all. You can't get over 20 years, and listen, the list goes on and on and on. And soon to be Dr. Stephanie. Okay. And then like the focus areas are beautiful. Right? The focus areas are beautiful because, as we, discussed very briefly at the panel discussion, there's not a lot of research on Black men and mental health. And part of the reason is that they don't disclose, and because of the stigma and all the things. But there's just not a lot out there from my little research. But if you're a doctoral student, then you have probably way more than I do. So we're gonna definitely dive into a little bit of that. What does that look like? What encouraged that research, all those things. And I guess I'll open up from that space. What encouraged the Black man to be your focus for research?
So I get that question a lot. As a Black woman, like, why am I not studying more about Black women and all of our challenges? Not that we have been studied enough. There is a population that seems to be neglected and ignored. And I started doing my research on survivors of childhood sexual trauma. And I discovered that there's not a lot of research on Black boys and Black men. And most of the research paints them as criminals, as aggressive. They were even called super predator at one time. Wow. And I was like, yeah, we got to do better than this. Like, I have 2 sons. I have brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins. And then, of course, wanting to be in relationship with Black men. I was like, we really, really need to not only research them, but give them a voice, because the only voice they have now is a negative one. And so I just dove right in, and everything I've done from the time I hit my program has been research on Black men and Black boys.
Wow. For all of those reasons, as a mother of a Black man, I say thank you for finding ways, because navigating the development of a young Black man is not It's not the easiest thing. And then you get to see, from a very interpersonal perspective, what it looks like. And for me, it brought about a lot more compassion for the Black man, a lot more need to understand and be patient, and also to just recognize a person for who they are. Right. Because you get this little infant baby that grows up to a little boy, to a young man, to a grown man, and you watch them grow through all these seasons to the moment of them deciding who they're going to be, and who they're not, based on what somebody else has said. And so in those findings, what have been some key points or highlighted points that you found in your research thus far?
So one of the main things is, like I said, the kind of demonization of Black men. There was research in the area of, so when you start talking about Black men and relationships, there was a lot of research on Black men and HIV. And so it's homosexuality, HIV, that's because of money and funding. So let's research this to death so we can get some more money to research some more, but not realizing that there's so much more to the Black man than the criminalization and then the medical model of Black men. And so can I talk about my monthly group?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I started a men's mental health monthly check-in group. In my very first session, first of all, I'm the only woman. And I'm like, these men, they're not going to trust me. They're not going to open up. They're going to think, all Black women are like this. And she's going to talk the whole time. She doesn't care about us. It's going to be a bunch of nagging and complaining. But what I discovered is we started talking about emotions. And I always start out let's name them, because Black men haven't really been given the space to have emotions. If they do, it's either anger and aggression, and sadness sometimes, but none of the other million emotions are afforded to the Black man. And so in my first session, we were talking about sadness. And I said, when was the last time you cried? And one of the participants said, do you mean cry or do you mean shed a tear?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what? There's a difference?
Right.
And they were all like, yeah, there's a difference. I cry all the time, but I probably only shed a tear maybe 3 times in my life. And I'm like, so what? What's the difference? This was news to me. And so, as I've been studying human behavior and emotions forever. And I'm like, the body responds to emotion. When you're sad, you cry. And I'm like, but you're telling me that when you're sad, you don't display the actual emotion of sadness. You hold it in. So that was eye-opening for me. That of course I have boys too. And I'm like, I've seen them cry, but I'm like, what is going on where Black men feel like they can't express themselves? And so that was a big part of my research, is giving them space to have emotions. But first you got to start out with educating them on emotion and allowing them space to feel the whole range of emotions and not just aggression and sadness. So that piqued my interest in researching them more. And so my research topic is actually reconceptualizing Black men as victims. And then here we go with, I'm not a victim, but we'll get into that. Because what you feel you are also dictates what you identify as, right? As you were talking about, children and their identity and who am I, what am I going to be? So if society's telling you that you're only a monster and you're only aggressive and you're only a criminal, then you don't get the same concessions as people who say we're victims of a crime like sexual assault. You don't get therapy. You don't get, depressed criminal charges. You're just kind of left to deal with all of that stuff. So that's a huge part of my research is what happens if we actually allow Black men to feel and give them the space, and then also give them the tools to deal with trauma, relationships, work, racism, all the stuff that brings up emotions. What happens if we actually allow that to happen with Black men?
Wow, that was a lot of good stuff. Just in that moment. And I remember one of my friends, and she's a therapist as well. And we were having a conversation. That question kind of came up about the Black men not feeling like they have support, or they don't feel supported. They don't have community. And so we were like, she didn't think that they, I don't think she thought that they really didn't have it. So she asked, or maybe the guys asked. Some way the question came about. So I asked some guys that I know, and the guys were really out here feeling like they don't have like community, especially. So, and then too, a lot of them really did kind of hold tight to their aunties. Like, and when I say aunties, not these young aunties, like not me type aunties, but like the older auntie, right, and their grandmamas, like they grandma baby. And like for them, that's the woman who showed them the most love. And so like now men are feeling like they have no support. Not just from the world, but from their own community, from Black women. And I thought that was interesting. And so another question that came up was when was the last time you cried? And I asked a member of my family, a male member of my family, a tough one too. And he had to think about it. And I'm going to tell you, he said it hadn't been since he was a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it blew my mind because I'm like, I be crying all the time.
Right.
I be crying all the time. How are you? He had to think about it. He was like, no, probably since I was a child.
Yeah.
What does that do to the physically, mentally? Like, what does that do to the body, to the makeup, the chemical makeup, to not have released that way?
Right. So so emotions, here I go with my therapy hat. Emotions, really, the main thing they want to do is to be acknowledged. We all have emotions. We're human beings. We're born with them. We're given these emotions for a reason. Well, when you suppress the emotion, it's going to come out whenever and however it wants to. So if you're sad today over the loss of your grandmother and you hold it in for 10, 20 years, well, one day when you are, I don't know, walking down the street and somebody steps on your toe, all of those emotions from 20 years ago that you've been holding in can explode. Yeah. And this is where you get, like the explosions and like, I don't know where that came from. I was just sitting here and all of a sudden I'm angry. It's because the emotions were not expressed or acknowledged when you first had them. So of course we know that holding in emotions and not feeling our emotions or even communicating them can cause all kinds of not only psychological but physiological problems too.
Yeah, those heart attacks, those strokes, all those things that a lot of Black men unfortunately die from and struggle from, even cancer, which the addictions and just all those things. Your grandmother died 20 years ago. You didn't cry, and then too. So for the man who does not know what it even looks like, right? And we can stay in the moment of grief, right? We can stay in that loss because that's natural. That happens for everybody. You lose your grandmother, you lose a sibling, you lose a parent, whatever the case may be. Like again, girls, I don't know. It's probably the feminine makeup, the hormonal makeup, whatever. Me personally, it's easy. I see you cry, I'm gonna cry. I don't even know what you're crying for. We cry.
Yeah. But society also has told girls you can cry. So when you cry, you get it, you get consoled, you get attention, you get comforted because you're a girl and you're crying. Whereas when the boy is about to cry, it's suck it up, crying is for girls, act like a man, tough it up. And so they're not given that space or even the opportunity to release that emotion.
So what could we say, like, as a mother? There was a question here, and I want to bring that question back up because I think this is a good place to ask that question. It says, I am a young mother raising my young child whom I don't want to grow up suppressing his feelings. What are some tools and things that I can do to let him know that he have free space to express himself? A very good question. And again, even if we stay in the same space of grief, there's a grown man who's going to hear that question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you say to him by responding to her about her young child?
So the best teacher of anything is modeling. So when you have emotions, you show your emotions. A lot of, especially single moms, we don't want our kids to see us like worrying, stressed. So we go in the shower or we close the door and we cry. Well, what's wrong with saying to your son, today was a rough day for me. I'm sad today. And so then your son grows up knowing that it's okay to have emotions and to talk about the emotions. And that's a good place to start. Another one is the whole, like, how was your day? You know, like, tell me how your day was. Kind of, sort of, so open-ended questions instead of like, did you have a good day? Yes or no, right? And they'll say, yeah. But if you say, like, what was the highlight of your day? Or was there a moment today when you were scared, worried? You have to start giving them the words that go with the emotions. That's another whole podcast because men especially don't know how to name emotions. They know angry, like I'm mad, I'm pissed off, I'm angry. But they don't know, oh, you know, I'm worried, I'm perplexed, I'm, you know, pensive. Like there's so many other emotions that we have, but they don't get the opportunity to express them. So it's just either mad or sad. Those are the only two. So start naming emotions with your kid. Also, you have to ask them, how do you know you're sad? Like what happens to your body? How do you know you're angry? How do you know when you're angry? How do you know when you're happy? How do you know, like, the reason emotions have these names is there is a body, a physiological response to the emotion. So if we know that we're like palms sweating, heart is racing, I'm scared.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then they could start to, if I can't name it, what's going on with my body? You know, if this is going on, then I'm feeling this. Yeah.
That is so good. I hope that answered your question, Mama. And so, man, and to the adult man who heard that, be encouraged, sir. So, and I would ask this question to carry on from that one to the adult. Another conversation that I've had lately was like how do we get the balance too? Because sometimes it can seem like the men have found their emotions and feelings, and it kind of makes them look, I'm gonna use some of the social media words, sassy and
zesty.
Sexuality is questioned all the time because they have, learned to feel or what the thing. So that could also make a whole larger group of men say, no, I ain't doing that. Keep them back in that suppression space. Like, how do we get a good balance? And that's for men and women, how, as women, we don't push them back. And then as men, they don't pull back.
Right. One of the main things that I learned is that everything we do serves a purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it, right? So if a woman is denying your emotion or misnaming your emotion, there's a reason she's doing that. And a big part of that is fear. So as a Black woman, if I have never seen my man upset and now he's upset and saying he's upset, what do I do with that? I don't know what to do with that, right? It scares me. So I'm going to shut him down. I'm going to say, oh, you just being, weak.
Emotional, yeah.
Yeah, you're just acting like a woman. Because now I don't have to actually deal with that emotion because that emotion is scary to me because it's unfamiliar.
That's a good point.
So it doesn't excuse the behavior of the woman, but it gives context to it. So now she's not being mean and insensitive. She's scared. So now we have to deal with the fear. We name it and we deal with the fear as the emotion.
Wow. So I say to us ladies for sure. And two, you know, self-awareness. And we talked about in the last episode, we talked about how vital self-awareness is in relationship. Because I gotta know me. I gotta know what puts me in an uncomfortable space and what puts me in a comfortable space. So then when I'm with somebody else, I can separate their stuff from mine. Yeah. And I've also seen in the space where men are saying that women don't like accountability. Now, I mean, I don't think I have that problem, but I can see how that can go. So to the point of what you just shared, like for us women, say, hold on, like before you label him, before you call him out, before you push him back, like just hold on a minute and say, hey, babe, whoa, I ain't never felt this before. I've never seen you like this. Because that probably gives him a level of comfort and ease too. So now it opens up the space for both of you all to feel vulnerable enough to share. Now he can say, well, baby, I'm scared too.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that would actually create that safe space that you need to have a healthy relationship.
Yep.
Wow. So men, don't pull back, right? And if she does snap, it's because she too is feeling an emotion that she may not be able to explain. But this is also why, you know, the mental health awareness is key. And so when I think about what we do in this space and how we're doing it, continuously having the conversations, not making mental health so cliche, this is why. Because it's deeper than the self-care bubble bath. It's deeper than the get my nails done. It's deeper than the, you know, wash my car and look good. We have to build relationships so we can build family, so we can build community. And this is how. So I have a comment that I want to put up here because, again, it'll speak to what we just said. And this is a young man. He said, I honestly find it hard to show emotions because I feel like nobody will actually understand. So it just turns into anger, which causes me to just eliminate myself from the equation. And thank you for sharing that, young man. And I know that to be true for so many Black men.
Yeah. And it's the fear of the unknown. Like these emotions are really big and they are uncomfortable and I don't want to feel them. I want them to just go away. So if you don't even acknowledge that I have these emotions, that gives me the perfect opportunity to just stuff them down, push them down, and act like everything is okay. Or anger is usually a secondary emotion. A lot of people say that they get angry. There's usually an emotion that comes before anger. And then that emotion is what actually makes us angry. So now I want to express myself to you. You don't want to acknowledge my emotion. So now I'm hurt. I'm disappointed. But I don't want to be hurt and disappointed because that's what weak people do. So now I'm angry because angry is the go-to, especially for men.
Something about that was so therapeutic. You know, like when they say make it make sense, that made it make sense. And I hope every ear that hears this, the way it was just, you know, the question that was presented, the statement that was presented, which speaks to the heart of so many men, Black, white, Puerto Rican, or Asian, but to so many men who don't feel like they have that safe space. There's work to do on both sides. Somebody says, and this is why therapy is so key. Each person has their deep work to do and deal with the negative programming that affects how we relate to people. Come on. So negative programming. So let's talk about history, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the history. And even if we can speak to just his last part about dealing with the negative programming that affects how we relate to people, from your research, from your experience, what does that negative programming even look like?
Well, I mean, it's by design. And I mean, it goes way back. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I could study what they did in Africa, but I know when we got here, we were not treated as human beings. So you got this big, strong man coming over here, wanting to be what he is used to being, a protector, a provider. safety for his woman, his wife, his children, and all that gets stripped away. And they're told, you don't have emotions. You don't have emotions. Like, I can take your child right out of your arm and sell it, and you won't show emotion. You don't have emotions because you're an animal. Wow. So then we are like programmed to not have emotions of caring. It may look like disinterest. It may look like being cold, but it's protective, right? Because if I don't care, then I can't get hurt. I can't get disappointed. Can't get depressed. So I don't care. So that goes back, way back. And then it just gets perpetuated in like Jim Crow, and then the prison system. You go, the whole like sharecropping and all of that was not made to make Black men feel good. It was made to make them feel subhuman. Yeah. And so now we're in a space where we want you to be human. Like, show me some emotion. And then you show it. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do with that? Mm-hmm. Like, that's scary. That's scary. Like, keep that to yourself. So it's going to be some work. It's some work. You gotta go into it intentionally. Like, I'm going to change this narrative. The programming is like a core belief, right? It's a core belief. And so every time you try to do something different, that core belief yells at you. You are subhuman, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're weak, you're this and that. So then that becomes like your narrative. I hope that answered that question.
You did. And I'm glad you pulled out all those things like Jim Crow, slavery. And then it was you who brought it up on the panel, just like giving the hearing and then actually put an imaginative visual to you and the lady having the baby. But soon as she delivers and get that baby to a space, it's ripped out of your hands. Mm-hmm. And as a man, you can't fight to get your child back. As a woman, she can't fight to get her child back. And so many of our ancestors had to stand there and watch that happen repeatedly. Like, you didn't even have a choice of whether you want to have a baby or not. Like, you were breeded, right? And don't mess around and be a strong, firm man. You top breeder, right?
And you were raped, or you watched your loved one get raped, and there was nothing you could do about it. So then you kind of like separate yourself and, disassociate so that you don't feel the pain.
Yeah. And I want people to understand, because sometimes in recent conversations, people feel like we are far disconnected from what we just talked about. And we're not. We're not far removed from civil rights, Jim Crow. Like, we're not far removed. And okay. All right. Shout out to you.
And doing the work is how you change those core beliefs. If you don't do the work, it's just going to stay there.
Yeah. And we have to, right? And again, keeping that history in mind, I want us to know what we're fighting against. That's why I brought that up. Like, I want us to know what we're fighting against. We're fighting against systems. We're fighting against like deep roots. And so the work that has to come, we have to be present too, but be mindful as well. Mm-hmm. And so when we are sharing our big emotions and we're Black, like, we have a lot of soul. So it looks animated a lot of times. Yeah. It can look scary, but like Darius said, that therapy will help you do your work. So then when you receive your partner or your family member, because it's not just about romantic, and we're going to get to that side in a second, because we're going to talk about sandwich therapy. It's not just the romantic relationships, but the platonic one, because that is where you learn first. I'm in relationship with my father before I'm in relationship with my child's father. So you got to know how to work the platonic ones first. Oh God, listen, let me tell you something. The people are talking, and I appreciate it. So somebody that previous comment that we responded to said, correct. So now as life goes on, it feels as if sometimes I feel like I got it all figured out, but in reality, I'm really tearing down my mental as I brush it all to the side. So what advice do you have for me on how to become mentally stronger and more open? And this is a young man. Got to do that work, young man.
Yeah, I mean,
that's good. Thank you for sharing.
Trust and vulnerability come to mind. And if we want to go into relationships, we can go into relationships because all relationships, friends, family, your very first relationship is your family. And that doesn't necessarily mean biological. It's just whoever brings you up. How they attend to your emotion and their own emotions, that modeling that we talked about earlier, is going to be your blueprint for relationships. If they get angry and they slam the door, when you get angry, you're going to slam the door. If they get angry and they sit down and talk, you're going to sit down and talk. And so for someone wanting to change what they're doing that's negative to something positive, you start by finding safety in a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a love relationship. The men's group it's a good space where they can talk and cry and hug and not be judged. Is that relationship going to be with someone you love, like a partner, or is it going to be with your homeboy who you can tell him, hey man, I don't have it together. Like, this is rough. And also know that they're not going to throw it back at you. I hear that a lot about with Black men and Black women, that Black men feel like if I tell you, then later on down the line, you're going to throw it back in my face.
Yeah.
Which they do. But once again, it's protective. It's fear. It's, I'm gonna get you before you get me, that whole thing. But start with trusting someone. The relationship with yourself is very important. You show up for yourself, you support yourself, you are there for yourself. And then hopefully you can then extend that to a trusting relationship with someone, where then you can start letting your walls down and bringing your emotions out that you've been suppressing.
And what I heard in that was start with yourself, start in a safer place. And sometimes that romantic relationship is not the safest place. Once you, establish that platonic relationship, family member, friend, a homie, home girl, whatever, it makes you more and more comfortable with who you are. Then you can extend that love outside of the romantic relationships. And that, that'll keep you from withdrawing and continuously suppressing and building walls within your heart and space like that. This young man said, there's a woman that told me I could be vulnerable. And when I did express my emotions, she judged me and started treating me differently. Mm-hmm. And I know we said that a lot of times that's fear, like for the young lady, I've not seen you be that way. But that is one of the things that I've seen from some Black men that pushes them away from the relationship space, that like really closes the door, especially romantically and sometimes platonically, and they don't trust people. They don't trust, because they'll be like, the one person I did that with, and they judged me and talked about me. What would you say?
So you're taking a chance on being vulnerable, right? But before you are vulnerable, there has to be a level of trust and safety. And then, do I trust you? What? Do I know you can hurt me? Yes. Do I hope that you won't? Yes. But you can, right? So you're taking a chance on exposing yourself and being hurt, or not exposing yourself and holding your relationships in and not having a quality relationship. Holding your emotions in and not having a quality relationship. So you take a chance.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get hurt.
Yeah.
But who's been right? I was gonna say, who's been hurt before? Raise your hand, right?
My toes will be up, but they probably
right? Yeah. And here we are. Here we are.
It really is a chance. It really is a gamble. I'm a believer. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm a believer. And the more I look at the example of what God did through Jesus and what Jesus did, and even Paul, like I'm right now in my devotional, Paul, when he had his road to Damascus experience, the change that he made to totally surrender his life to, you know, sharing the good news. Like that was a big sacrifice. And, you know, that it comes with it sometimes. Love is a risk. But they say it's better to have loved
and lost,
and hurt and lost than have never loved at all.
right.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. Because memories are beautiful too, right? I
Mhm.
might have lost it, but there are good memories. There are things that I can remember about the love I once had. But to never have had love in any form, and unfortunately, some people experience that. I couldn't believe it, right? I come from a really large family, and so I couldn't believe it. I'm a parent. I show my child love. I don't know, but there are people who haven't love from a platonic familial space or from a romantic space, and my heart goes out.
Yeah.
What do you say? Why I recommend licensed professionals, because law, that's it. Law, unless there's a threat of self-harm or harm to others, they cannot use your info against you. Yes, that is definitely one of my top points when I encourage, especially men, Black men, to go to therapy. You ain't got to worry about it. That girl or that guy worked really hard for that licensure, for those tests, for those exams, honey. Your co-payment or whatever your payment is not enough to, you know, make that sacrifice. And again, even in that, it's human nature. So, but you deserve to have your feelings felt.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to say it. You deserve to have your feelings felt. Male, female, platonic, romantic. And let's talk about romantic, because it's February. That Friday is Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And even though we've talked about, and I'm glad we was able to address that disconnect. And so we're going to talk about sandwich, right? Sandwich therapy. And so if you just got in here, because of the social media guidelines, we can't say the other words, and your child might be listening. So we're going to talk about sandwich just a little bit up in here. But when I saw that on your list of, you know, notable things that you can provide to the conversation, I wanted to talk about it because I've actually talked to another sandwich therapy, and I was like, really? There are people who go to the sandwich therapy when they're married because they don't know how to be intimate physically with their partners, and they're married or they're not being physically intimate. What are some of the negative impacts of that being a barrier in your relationship? We'll start from marriage because that's where you should be doing it, but we'll start from marriage and then work our way back to the single life. Because I mean, you know, no judgment over here. But what are some of the negative challenges for that being a barrier?
So sandwich therapy. There are sandwich educators, and there are sandwich counselors, and there are sandwich therapists. And the therapists are licensed clinical mental health professionals who can provide psychotherapy along with the sandwich therapy. And what it means is there's a disconnect. Either desire levels are different, arousal levels are different. This person likes touching, this person likes not touching, just discrepancies in what you want and what you like and what feels good. And then there are psychological barriers that stand in the way of having a quality and pleasurable sandwich relationship. And so you go to therapy to work on the psychological stuff that could be standing in the way, but then there are also some physiological issues that come up. I mean, we could talk about with age, your body changes, hormone levels change. What do you do with that? And then the whole like self-esteem, like, you know, I don't have the same muscle tone I used to have. I don't have the same stamina I used to have. And so it causes problems in the bedroom. And then a sandwich therapist can work with you, give you homework assignments. The first thing we do first is have you do medical physical, because there could be some things, some medications can cause problems in Can I say the bedroom?
Mhm.
In the bedroom. And so you have to have a physical first. And then we look at the psychological and how can we come up with some interventions, just like in regular therapy, interventions and tools to help you have a more pleasurable and enjoyable relationship.
Mhm. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I don't even think I've ever heard like the details of how that worked. I don't think I knew it was a real thing until like later part of life. And they were like kind of popping up in different spaces. I didn't know that could be a thing.
Yeah.
So there are some people who grew up under the notion that sex ain't everything. It's not all about sex. It's not always about sex. And I know that could create a mental barrier itself, right? And that probably would have answered my own question. But my question would have been or is, what's the negative impact or what is the impact on telling people sex ain't everything, especially if their desire is to be in a romantic relationship?
Well, if you want to, kind of like make it a little bit more like general, maybe, or more, I'm going to take it down a level with like love languages. So if a person likes physical touch and the other person likes quality time, and the person who likes quality time tells the other person physical touch is not all that. So what's going to happen in that relationship? Mm-hmm. The person who needs physical touch doesn't get physical touch. Mm-hmm. And the person who wants physical touch, so now what do? So now they are without something that they want, just like if the person who wants like a sexual interaction, the other person doesn't. But what a therapist would do is get to the root of that. Is it an issue of arousal? Is it an issue of some past sexual trauma? There's some barrier that's in the way, that's standing in the way of the other person wanting to have enjoyment with their partner, but now the partner is left short, and that causes friction in the relationship. And you start, every time I want to touch you, you don't want me to touch you, or you never want me to touch you. And then then the other person becomes defensive. And so then that's now created a conflict in the relationship.
Wow. And when you hear it that way, when you say it that way, it makes it the reality of what it is not just sex sandwich. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that comes into this interaction. There's a lot that comes with this expression of love or like or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that come with it. And so, I understand why relationships, monogamous or whatever you choose, is probably safer, because inside of that, we go that far to find out what's happening. But mm-hmm. if I have a rotation, then, hey, you get yours, I get mine, or not. I'll see you next rotation. And so, and that leaves people damaged, right?
Yeah.
Because it happens so quick. I'm not even able to get deep enough to share with you why you in my rotation or why, we're doing this. It's just boom, appointment time, appointment day. Let's make this sandwich. And then we go again. And so I think that leads to a lot of the disruption that we've seen in the relationship culture for our community, on top mm-hmm. of so many other things.
And then those negative beliefs and core beliefs, maybe growing up, you were told good girls don't do that. And so now you're 40 years old and dating, and you have this belief that good girls don't do that. But your new boo is saying, I need it, I want it. And so maybe you give in, and then here comes guilt and shame, and which is another psychological dilemma that you have to deal with. So now you have to deal with something else. So yeah, that's what it could look like.
Bothered. So the capacity coach is like, there's a difference between being bothered and being triggered. I'm not sure which one this is right now. Maybe triggered. Because I'm from the church culture. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that, and everybody who knows me know I'm from the church culture. And that is, now as an adult, a more seasoned adult, that has been a big part of the problem for church culture. You know, you pit men and women kind of against each other when they're young. You make the girl think that the boy is a bad boy, stay away from him, and he only want to mess up your life. But then as she ages, you want her to pick one of these bad boys. Well, I done spent up until age 16, 17 thinking these boys are bad, but now I got to marry one of them. And then, you know, we really haven't been, you're not properly prepared to engage in the ways that we're talking about. So you'll go into these marriages because some of the sex therapists that I've talked to, and just from research and commentary and just conversation, the church people struggle. Like they be struggling. It's difficult for the woman to give in to the desires, and I would say almost the natural desires of her husband, because that's your husband if that's what he likes. As long as it doesn't, you know, cause harm to you in a unhealthy way, then you know what I'm saying? But psychologically, for 20, 30 years, you've heard this thing, don't do this, don't do it that way, don't do that. And all of a sudden, because I'm married, it's supposed to just turn off. I don't think it works.
Yeah, that's a struggle.
Yeah. So, and I know sandwich therapy can be, sandwich education can be, you know, one of those iffy things, because first of all, who's going to teach it? The parent, the school, the church, who's in charge of making sure that this child or this person understands sandwich education? Right. But I just know from personal experience, I'd rather it be a evidence-based, honest conversation about what this is, because she won't always be 9. He won't always be 9. One day they're going to be 29. Right. They're going to make a lot of sandwiches. We'd rather have good sandwiches. Mustard all the things that you like. And so, you know, so hopefully this helps you all. You know, Bay Day is coming up on Friday, and, you know, with your sandwich making. So what would you say to couples who may be struggling in that area? And this is a national holiday. People are going to celebrate love and all the things that come with that. And there may be some couples that struggling, and there may be a woman that feels, okay, we got to do this. And the man be like, I hope I get this. Like, professionally, what note would you share with that couple?
Well, that's a good question, because any type of therapy or therapist has to do like an assessment, and but just generally, I might not be the right person to ask. So for me, probably since the age of, 9 or 10, the human body has always fascinated me, and everything it does and all of its functioning, including sandwich functioning. So it's a natural, as human beings, we are sexual creatures, right? The purpose and why we do it is, could be religious, could be values, morals, and all that. So for Valentine's Day, if that is something you want to do with your partner and there's no pressure, we talk about consent, which sounds a little strange for older adults, because when you think of consent, you think of kids. Like, can I touch you? Can I kiss you? Can I touch you here? But consent for adults is important too. What is our plan when we go out to dinner? What are we going to do? We're going back to your place, going back to my place. And then in that space, are we planning to do anything, And so talking about that. So communication is probably number one, definitely number one. Don't make assumptions. Nobody owes you anything. This is for women too. Yeah, this is for women too. Men are expected to be, like machines and perform and always want it. But it's not always true. And so consent comes from both ends, the man and the woman.
Yeah. Yeah, as clean as we can get it, and that's true. A very true statement, and it goes both ways. Consent, communicate, because people have different appetites for the type of sandwich that they like,
Yep.
and we can't assume one of the I think is a very immature reasoning that people will use. We grown has
Right.
nothing to do with the fact that I have my palate and you have
Hmm.
yours.
Hmm.
Even as an adult, I get to decide what I will and will not partake in, what type of sandwich I will make. And so a lot of times, like you say, we grown. So you assume you get total service, and that's just not how it goes. And again, male and female,
Hmm.
that's just not how it goes. So
Yeah.
communication, and even if you've been in a relationship for a long time, um, and I know some men may feel like, and some women may feel like, well, I gotta ask for it. You he married, is mine. It's it's just
Communication.
communication,
Yeah.
honey. It is not like that. It is yours in that essence, but just think of, you know, ask for you listen. Okay, we ain't gonna talk too deep.
For the married couples, there is a quiz that's called Yes, No, Maybe, and you
Mhm.
can Google it and fill it out. You know, there are yes things that yes, I will do these things. There are no, absolutely not. I will not do these things. And then there are maybes, like, you know, convince me. But that goes with communication, right? You are communicating what you want and what you don't want, what you allow and what you don't allow.
Mhm. I put that. Let me share that married couples yes no maybe quiz, and go on there. And again, I had to have this conversation a couple of weeks ago. Things change over time, even a person's desire for certain things. And so communication is always going to be essential. We may have started off doing things one way or
Mm-hmm.
understanding things one way. Years pass, time pass. Somebody's saying it different now. Somebody
Right.
wants something different now. And so it is so dangerous to assume, because we've been married so long, we've been in a relationship so long. I know you better than you know yourself. Don't make any assumptions when it comes to human communication.
Mm-hmm.
Communication would probably increase the impact of the sandwich making. So there was a question earlier that and I think it was about like relationships who make sandwiches but they're not married, like the longevity of being in a relationship when you're not married but you're making sandwiches. And so I don't know, again, later in the life I see people making that choice.
Yeah.
I've come across more people deciding to just listen. We just making sandwiches. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to get married. I'm not trying to be committed. You hit me up, I hit you up.
The And again, the most important thing is communication. Like, do I think you and I are in a committed relationship and you just think we're making sandwiches? So we need to have this conversation and be on the same page about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And there's just gonna be nowhere around communication. And so, and then too, again, I've learned to preface my thoughts and my perspective on things by my beliefs, as to not put it on anybody else.
Right.
So, and I'll say, as a believer, or if this is your preference, then these are the things that you probably wouldn't do. But if you're not a believer, I have no ruler or anything for how you do your sandwiches, your life, or anything.
Mm-hmm.
You get to decide, you get to choose. And so sometimes too, when you have people who are maybe of a certain religion or a belief system, meeting people who are, and I'm just gonna say, free spirits, and then they decide that they want to be in a relationship, that's probably where a lot of friction can come from, right? Because then this person is held to that moral standard, but this free spirit is not, right? And so, can relationships like that last? Well, I ain't gonna say can it last. Anything can last if you make it work. Well, if
I
you,
mean, as long as you have different values and you don't try to change my values, I don't try to change your values, and we can coexist. But if I believe in bologna and you believe in no pork, that's going to be an issue, right? So whatever my values and beliefs are, as long as they don't bump up against what yours are, then we can be okay.
Yeah, because I've heard of Christians and Muslims being married, and being happily married, like coexisting. And of course, with the two religions, one have a thought that Jesus was a prophet, and the other one thinks he's the savior of all things and everything. But they're married, they coexist, and they stay at work. So, but again, communication. We cannot go beyond communication. We cannot go past communication. And then we have to learn how to effectively communicate in all things. And I think that will help with us closing that gap, like decreasing this disconnect that we're having.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, people are thinking this how you should be doing it, this what should be happening, versus being present with the person in front of you and seeing what you're working with, because you're not dating everybody. You're only dating the person that you're in relationship with. So I think that's who we should be having these conversations with, versus, you know, all the podcast episodes telling you what to do and how to do it. And listen, this has been more than a notion, I'd say. This has been really good. I do want to highlight this comment because it speaks to what we've done here today. It says, well, I want to thank both of you all the way from the M. That's Memphis. I will be using the advice given here tonight. And so I'm glad you were able to find value in what we were able to share. And that is why this podcast space exists, right? In my community, in this virtual space, because people all over the world will hear and need to know. And I know sometimes people have questions they don't want to answer. They don't want to ask out loud, especially about mental health, about sandwiches, about, you know, a lot of things. So when we come into this space, we're able to curate a conversation that can hopefully address some of those, you know, quiet questions, if you will. So before we wrap it up and I allow you to get back to your awesome night, and thank you so much for making space and sharing so openly in this space and educating the people, empowering the people, and equipping. We've touched all three tonight for sure. So businesses, work you're doing, anything that people can share in, how can they find you? How can they connect with you?
So one of the things I do, I kind of touched on, is a monthly men's mental health group. It's in person. It's in Austin. I know this is nationwide and worldwide, but if you're in the Austin area, even if you're in San Antonio, you're welcome to come. It is a closed group in that women are not allowed in the space. I am very, very honored, and I feel very privileged that they allow me in their space and where they are vulnerable. We do different topics. The topic this month is love, all kinds of love. We've done emotional intelligence. We've done grief. You know, all of those things. I am a private therapist, so I do see private clients, couples, and individuals. I'll have to share my my website with you because I can't remember it right now. I'm in psychology today, so if you just put my name in there, you'll see me. Actually, if you just put my name in Google, you'll see my my webpage, and my webpage is Rich WITCH peacetherapy.com. And then I'm also in a group of therapists. I do a lot of stuff.
The resume is long, guys. Well, she is tagged on all of the posts that I've made, the story in my stories, and we're connected on a social media space. So if you see her name, grab it, connect to her. If you're in Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Waco, all the things that surround us, or if you're willing to travel, honey. What about virtual sessions?
Well, I do virtual sessions and with private therapy.
Okay, so like virtual, and you know, again, the way we progress, telehealth is a thing. Yep. You don't have to always travel outside of your home. You can literally set up your computer, your phone, and have a trusted therapy session, because HIPAA is still a thing even in there. So you're safe, guys. You're still protected. It's not gonna get out unless you got somebody in your house that'll put it out. But connect to her from the social media space. She is tagged on my page. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For sharing in this space, for helping our community grow, and what you're doing with those men. Thank you for providing a safe healing space for them. I know it is necessary, it is needed. So
Yeah.
may it grow and expand, and we help the brothers out.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, I'll say any closing remarks.
So we didn't get to touch much on like the big divide between Black men and Black women. The only thing I wanted to say is nobody wants to be the bad guy, and if I make you the bad guy, then I don't have to make any changes, right? So if I put everything on you, then I'm okay. You're the one who needs to make the change. So a lot of what's going on right now is the pointing the fingers. You do this, well, you do this, and you do this. All women do this, and all men do that. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. So use a little empathy. Empathy can go a long way. You may not ever understand what someone is going through. It's actually not helpful if you say, well, I understand what you're going through, because you don't. But you can imagine, like I can imagine how hard it is for a Black man in society with racism and everything that's stacked against them. Can you imagine what it's like to be a Black woman? So just putting yourself in the other person's shoes can give you some empathy, sympathy, compassion, and grace. And that's one way we can start to heal that divide between Black men and Black women.
Amazing closing statement. Yep, it wrapped it all up and brought it all back around. I'm glad you saved that to the end then. So yeah, you walk away with that. That is so true, man. If I make you the bad guy, I don't have to make any changes. And again, that brings about that self-awareness. So ladies, let's check ourselves. Fellas, check yourselves. Listen, we might not be all we got, but we what we got, right? We are what we have, and we might as well have something good, something great, something, life-changing. And I believe that for the Black man and Black woman. Okay. Well, make sure I ain't missing nobody or nothing. Thank you. Shout out to my family for showing up, my nephews, my cousins, my aunties, my mama, and my friends. So thank you for sharing space again with us. So y'all connect to Stephanie, soon to be Dr. Stephanie. Thank you for your work. Thank you for having the Black man in mind. And I look forward to great things in your future. All right. So you have a good night.
All right. You too.
All right. All right, y'all. That was really good, right? That was really good. So I know, you have been educated, you have been empowered, you have been equipped. The relationships are going to take work. Be willing to put the work in, not just for your partner, but for yourself. Start with those platonic relationships, your children, your family, your parents, your cousins. Like, start there, build up from there, and then in these romantic relationships, be a giver. If I'm a giver and I connect with a giver and we give to each other, then we automatically receive. We don't have to butt heads with each other, guys. We all want the same thing: to be seen, to be heard, to be felt, to be loved. That's because we deserve that. This has been Mental Health Monday. Y'all know I so